The great ship Aurora was never meant to be a legend. It was a colony vessel built for long travel between stars. Its crew was made of families, farmers, engineers, and scientists. They were not soldiers. They had no weapons beyond the basic tools for clearing asteroids from their path. Their journey was meant to be peaceful. The year was 2234 by Earth time when the trouble began. The Aurora was passing through the edge of Kalar space, a region known for storms of charged particles and unpredictable currents in subspace. The humans aboard had studied the charts, but the storm came sooner than expected. The ship's shields weakened under the assault. Systems began to fail one by one. Inside the control room, Captain Roland kept his voice steady, though his hands gripped the armrest tightly. His crew moved fast, but the readings were clear. The storm would tear the Aurora apart before they could exit the sector. Families gathered in the central halls, holding on to each other as lights flickered. The message for help was sent, but it was a small signal. No one knew if it would reach anyone. Hours passed like days. The ship's hull temperature rose. Life support dropped to half. Many on board believed the end had come. Then the scanners picked up movement. At first, it was thought to be another wave of storm debris. Instead, 3 sleek ships appeared, cutting through the storm like hunters through water. Their hulls glowed with deep blue light, and strange curved wings folded and unfolded as they adjusted their course. These were Kalar ships. To humans, the Kalar were almost mythical. Records told of them as an ancient people who rarely left their own star systems. Their culture valued memory and heritage above all else. They were known to watch the galaxy from afar, rather than take part in its wars or trade. The Kalar ships moved into formation around the Aurora. Beams of pale gold light stretched between them, forming a protective web that absorbed the storm's force. The Aurora's shaking slowed. On the human bridge, every crew member stared at the display, hardly believing what they saw. A voice came through the comm. It was soft, but carried a tone that silenced the room. "You are safe. We will guide you to clear space. Follow our signal." The Kalar fleet led the Aurora out of the storm over the course of many hours. They never asked for payment. They never explained why they came. When the Aurora was clear and its systems were stable, the Kalar ships stopped. Captain Roland hailed them. "You saved us. We owe you everything." The Kalar leader replied, "A life preserved is payment enough. The storm takes too much from the stars. We will not let it take more today." And with that they turned and vanished back into the storm without another word. The humans continued their journey. They spoke of the Kalar with wonder and gratitude. Records of the rescue were kept carefully. Every family aboard told the story to their children, and the children told it to theirs. Over generations, the event became a central part of the Aurora's heritage. When the descendants of the Aurora settled on a distant world called Haven Reach, they carved a monument of smooth, black stone in the capital square. Upon it were inscribed the words, "We remember the Kalar who came to us in our darkest hour." For centuries, life went on. Humanity expanded across many worlds. They met other alien species, joined trade networks, and even fought small wars. But among the colonies founded by the Aurora, the Kalar were spoken of with deep respect. There were times when people laughed at the idea of a whole culture holding on to a single rescue for hundreds of years. The galaxy was full of shifting alliances and temporary deals. Few believed that any species would go to great effort to repay a kindness from so far in the past. But the descendants of the Aurora believed it completely. To them, a debt of honor was not erased by time. It was a living bond, one that must be repaid when the moment came, no matter the cost. Across the centuries, the Kalar were quiet. They did not seek contact with humanity, but neither did they hide. Their ships were sometimes seen passing through the edges of human space, graceful and unhurried. No formal treaty was made, no trade was exchanged. The connection remained as a story, not an alliance. Then, in the year 2876, the Kalar name appeared once more on the interstellar networks. It was not in the form of a quiet rescue this time. It was a desperate cry for help. The Verne Dominion, a vast and ruthless force, had begun its push into Kalar space. Star by star, they burned and conquered. Their fleets were massive. Their tactics left nothing alive behind. Many worlds simply surrendered without resistance, knowing the cost of fighting was too high. The Kalar were skilled in defense, but few in number. They had no allies in the wider galaxy. They had avoided politics and war for so long that no one believed they would receive aid. Their message to the galaxy was brief: we face extinction. If there are any among the stars who still hold friendship with the Kalar, we call to you now. Most governments turned away. They had their own troubles, their own borders to guard. Some even whispered that the Kalar should have joined alliances long ago if they wanted help now. On Haven Reach, the message arrived in the Central Assembly Chamber. The council read it in silence. The room was filled with leaders from many human worlds, some who knew the old story, some who did not. An elder stood. Her name was Mara, and she was a direct descendant of one of the Aurora's crew. Her voice was clear as she addressed the assembly. They saved us when we had nothing. They asked for nothing in return. They are calling to us now. We will answer. And with that, the oath of the Aurora, an oath carried through 500 years, was awakened. The Kalar's cry for help spread across the galaxy's communication relays. Most who received it read the message once and then moved on. In the age of endless conflicts, a distant war in another sector was easy to ignore. Governments thought first of their own trade routes, borders, and fragile peace agreements. In the Great Hall of the Terran Assembly, however, the words had a different weight. This was not only a message, it was a reminder of a promise made long ago. The assembly chamber was vast, built to hold representatives from every human colony and settlement. Delegates sat in curved rows of silver seats, arranged in a circle, around a central speaking platform. On the walls hung the banners of each human world. Among them, the dark blue and silver banner of Haven Reach stood tall, a silent reminder of its heritage. The current chair of the assembly, a calm man named Joran, read the Kalar message aloud. His voice echoed in the room. We face extinction. If there are any among the stars who still hold friendship with the Kalar, we call to you now. When he finished, the room was quiet. Everyone waited to see who would speak first. It was Mara, the elder from Haven Reach, who rose from her seat. She walked slowly to the center platform. Every step was deliberate, her eyes fixed on the crowd. She had lived long enough to see wars come and go, treaties form and break. But she had never forgotten the story passed to her by her grandfather, who had learned it from his grandfather before him. My family came to Haven Reach aboard the Aurora. Mara began. "We are alive. Today because of the Kalar. They saved us when they had no reason to do so. They asked for nothing, and yet gave everything. Now they call to us. I say we answer." A murmur rose from the delegates. Some nodded in agreement, others shook their heads. Representative Halrick from the industrial world of New Sol spoke next. "Mara, we respect the history of the Aurora, but you are asking us to send our fleets against the Vern Dominion. Their fleets are enormous. Their resources stretch across half the spiral arm. To fight them is to risk everything." Mara faced him without flinching. "We risk much, yes. But what is the worth of our word if we refuse now? If we choose safety over honor, then we become a people who forgets its debts. I will not be part of that." From another row, a younger delegate named Corin spoke up. "The Kalar have no allies for a reason. They kept apart from the galaxy for centuries. If they had formed pacts earlier, maybe they would not face this alone. Why should we sacrifice for a people who never stood with us in our own struggles?" Joren looked around the hall. The debate was heating quickly. "Let us not forget," he said, "that the Kalar did not owe us anything when they saved the Aurora. They acted without alliance, without trade, without gain. The question before us is not whether they deserve our help by law, but whether we choose to honor the act they gave us freely." The discussion continued for hours. Some argued the risk was too high. Others argued that to refuse was to abandon what it meant to be human. In the end, the vote was called. The result was close, but the decision was made. The Terran Assembly would send aid. Not a token force, but every available ship that could be spared. The announcement sent shockwaves across the galactic network. Within days, orders were issued. Shipyards worked through the nights. Crews were recalled from distant assignments. Merchant captains volunteered their cargo haulers to carry supplies. Engineers began refitting civilian vessels with armor plating and defense turrets. The scale of the mobilization surprised even the assembly itself. The media across human space carried the story. On small frontier outposts and great city worlds alike, people spoke of the Kalar rescue as if it had happened yesterday. Families told the tale to their children again, this time with a promise that they were now part of the repayment. Far beyond human space, in the War Council chambers of the Vern Dominion, the news was met with scorn. The Dominion warlord laughed when his advisors informed him, "Humans? They will break at the first battle. Let them come. We will show them what happens to those who stand in our way." But the humans did not plan to come unprepared. In the capital shipyards of Terra Prime, massive battle cruisers took on extra shielding layers. On the cold moon of Lassa, a hidden research facility unveiled a new engine design that could give smaller ships incredible maneuverability. Tactics were drafted to use asteroid belts, gas giant storms, and nebulae as battlefields where human ingenuity could match the Dominion's numbers. Meanwhile, messages were sent to the Kalar High Council. The words were short, but carried the weight of centuries. "We remember. We come." The Kalar response was one of disbelief at first. They had expected silence, not a full fleet from a distant species. Their council chambers filled with quiet, voices wondering if the humans could truly make a difference. But there was also something else. Hope. On the edge of human space, the first wave of ships gathered. Warships with gleaming hulls, freighters filled with medical supplies, repair, vessels, fuel tankers, and even science ships for battlefield analysis. It was not just a military force. It was an entire lifeline prepared to move into hostile space. At the head of the fleet was the Resolute, an old but reliable flagship. Captain Laren stood on its bridge, gazing at the assembled vessels. He had studied the Aurora story since childhood and wore a small emblem carved from a piece of metal said to be from the original colony ship's hull. As the countdown to departure began, Laren addressed his crew. "This is not a war for conquest. This is not about territory or wealth. We fight because we remember. We fight because when the Kalar had the power to save us, they did. Now it is our turn." Engines lit up one by one. The dark void beyond the fleet shimmered as the hyperspace gates activated. A deep hum filled the air as the first ship slipped into faster-than-light travel. The human fleet had begun its journey to Kalar space. The galaxy watched, unsure of what would happen next. Some expected them to be destroyed. Others began to wonder if perhaps there was something unique about humans after all. And far ahead, in the embattled worlds of the Kalar, the Dominion forces were preparing for what they thought would be an easy victory. They had no idea that a storm of steel and resolve was now moving toward them. The human fleet moved through hyperspace like a river of light. Ships of every class and size stretched in long formation. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Laren stood at the main display. Before him, the fleet status showed steady progress toward Kalar space. Behind that calm display, however, the weight of their mission pressed on him. The journey was long, but it gave time for word to spread even further. Across human space, entire worlds now knew of the Assembly's decision. The idea that humanity was going to war for a promise made 5 centuries earlier stirred strong emotions. On the farming colonies, people spoke with pride of the humans' courage. In the shipyards, workers raced to complete more vessels to send as reinforcements. In the great trade hubs, merchants discussed the risk of losing ships and goods, yet many still offered resources freely. In the galaxy's neutral news channels, analysts debated the choice. Some called it a noble act that would inspire other species. Others called it foolish and reckless, predicting that humanity would be crushed and humiliated. When the fleet finally neared the border of Kalar territory, a single message arrived from the Kalar High Council. It was transmitted on a frequency older than most current communication codes, carrying a signature that matched records from the Aurora's rescue centuries ago. The message was short. "Your arrival is unexpected. We did not believe any would answer our call. We are humbled." Captain Laren read the words aloud to the crew of the Resolute. A quiet murmur spread through the bridge. No one there had met a Kalar before, but the idea of them as distant saviors had been in human culture for generations. Laren sent a reply. "We remember. We stand with you." When the fleet crossed the last safe border, they were met by 3 Kalar escort ships. Sleek, with their familiar curved wings and blue hull markings, the ships glided toward the humans without fear. A channel opened, and the Kalar fleetmaster appeared on the main screen. Her voice was calm and melodic. "You bring many ships for a people who have given you nothing in return for centuries. Why?" Laren did not hesitate. "Because you once gave us everything when we had nothing. Our ancestors made a pledge. We keep it." The Kalar fleetmaster inclined her head slightly. "Then let us fight together." For the first time in hundreds of years, human and Kalar ships moved in the same formation. The Kalar escorts guided the fleet deeper into their territory, weaving through star systems now marked as dangerous by Dominion activity. In the War Council aboard the Resolute, human captains and Kalar commanders met for the first time. The atmosphere was cautious but respectful. Holographic maps of the front lines flickered above the table, showing the Dominion's advance. The Kalar strategist explained the situation. The Dominion holds this sector, she pointed to a cluster, of red-marked systems, and is moving toward our core worlds. Their numbers are vast. We have been holding them at the Alaris line, but our forces are stretched thin. We can hold for perhaps 2 more weeks before they break through. Lawrence studied the map. If we can hit their supply convoys here and here, they will have to slow their push. We can also use asteroid fields for ambushes. The Dominion relies on overwhelming force, but they are not prepared for fast strikes. Some Kalar officers exchanged glances. One spoke softly. Your plan is bold. It risks much. Laren smiled faintly. So does keeping a promise. The first joint mission was decided. A small mixed force of human and Kalar ships would intercept a Dominion supply fleet moving through the narrow corridor known as the Laris Gap. The gap was a dangerous place for any ship. Its edges were lined with dense asteroid clusters that could crush a vessel in seconds. Most fleets avoided it, but the Dominion used it as a shortcut to keep their supply lines moving fast. 3 days later, the Allied strike force arrived at the entrance to the gap. Human ships powered down their main drives and drifted among the asteroids, hiding their presence. Kalar vessels took positions on the far side, ready to close the trap. The Dominion convoy appeared exactly on schedule. Massive transport ships, heavily armored, moved in tight formation. Their escort cruisers scanned the area but detected nothing unusual. When the lead transport entered the narrowest part of the gap, Captain Laren gave the signal. Engines roared to life. Human frigates surged from the shadows, weapons blazing. Kalar ships swooped in from the far side, their pale gold energy beams slicing through the escort cruisers' shields. The Dominion formation shattered under the sudden attack. For the next 20 minutes, the battle raged between drifting asteroids. Human ships darted in and out of cover, targeting engines and supply containers. Kalar vessels used their precision weapons to disable enemy weapons without destroying the transports outright. The plan was not just to win the fight, but to capture the supplies intact. When the last Dominion ship fled, the gap was filled with the drifting hulks of damaged transports. Hundreds of containers of fuel, food, and ammunition floated in space, quickly gathered by the Allied force. The victory was more than just a tactical gain. It was the first time in history that human and Kalar forces had fought side by side. The news spread quickly through both civilizations. In Kalar cities, people spoke in amazement of the humans' speed and daring. In human colonies, people cheered to see the Kalar fighting alongside them as equals. That night, in the quiet of the Resolute's observation deck, Captain Laren looked out at the stars. He knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion would not let this defeat go unanswered. But for the first time, the Kalar had seen that humanity's pledge was not just words. It was action. And somewhere deep in the heart of the Dominion, their warlord now knew that the humans had arrived. The victory at the Laris Gap had given the Allied forces a brief moment of hope. Supply ships now carried precious resources back to the Kalar core worlds, and the Dominion advance had slowed. But Captain Laren knew the enemy would answer with force. The Dominion warlord was not one to accept defeat quietly. The Resolute and its fleet traveled toward the Alaris line, the main defensive barrier that protected the Kalar's last major colonies. This line was formed by a chain of fortified stations and patrol fleets spread across several star systems. If it fell, the path to the Kalar homeworlds would be open. As the human fleet approached, they saw the damage the Dominion had already done. Several stations bore scars from heavy weapons fire. Some patrol ships drifted lifeless, their hulls blackened from battle. The Kalar defenders were holding, but barely. On the command deck of Station Armath, Fleetmaster Seller greeted Captain Laren. The two stood before a large holomap showing the enemy's movements. "The Dominion is gathering here," Seller said, pointing to a cluster of red marks on the map. "They will strike soon. Our scouts report a fleet 3 times our size." Lauren studied the map. "If they attack in a single wave, we will not hold. We must make them break their formation." Selar raised an eyebrow. "You have an idea?" "Yes," Lauren replied. "We will give them a reason to chase us. A small human strike group will hit their flank, then retreat toward the asteroid field at Varus Edge. If they follow, we can lead them into the field's densest sector. Their larger ships will struggle to maneuver there. That will give our main force time to hit their weakened center." The Kalar officers exchanged cautious glances. It was risky. If the enemy refused to chase, the plan would fail. But there was no time for safer options. The next day, the trap was set. Human frigates, supported by a handful of Kalar fast attack craft, slipped toward the Dominion's flank. The space around Varus Edge was quiet, except for the faint hum of ship engines. When the Dominion fleet came into view, it was an overwhelming sight. Massive warships, their dark hulls lined with glowing red markings, moved in tight formation. Between them flew smaller escort craft, fast and heavily armed. Human strike group opened fire first. Streams of bright energy cut across the void, striking one of the Dominion cruisers. The enemy formation shifted in response, and several of their ships broke off to engage. Lauren's voice came over the fleet channel. "Pull them toward the edge. Keep your speed high. Do not engage too long." The human ships turned and accelerated, slipping into the asteroid field. Behind them, the Dominion pursuers followed, confident their heavier weapons would soon end the chase. At first, the asteroids were scattered, giving plenty of room to maneuver. But as the strike group went deeper, the rocks grew larger and closer together. Some were the size of small moons, their surfaces marked with craters and sharp ridges. Navigating them required constant adjustments. The Dominion ships began to slow, their massive hulls unable to turn as quickly. This was the moment Lauren had been waiting for. "Now," he said, and the strike group broke formation, each ship weaving through narrow gaps between the asteroids. The Dominion ships tried to follow, but several clipped the rocks, sending fragments spinning into their own fleet. The smaller human and Kalar craft darted through the chaos, striking at engines and shield generators before vanishing behind cover. Meanwhile, back at the Alaris line, the main Allied fleet prepared to move, with part of the Dominion force trapped. In the asteroid field, their central formation was weaker. Sailor gave the order, and the Allied fleet surged forward. The battle erupted across the system. Kalar capital ships unleashed precise volleys at the Dominion's command vessels, while human destroyers cut through enemy escort lines with rapid-fire strikes. The Dominion fought back fiercely, but without their full force they struggled to hold the line. In the asteroid field, Lauren's group continued to harass the trapped Dominion ships. Explosions lit the darkness as damaged vessels collided with drifting rocks. Finally, with their engines crippled, the Dominion pursuers broke off and began a slow retreat. Laren ordered his ships to pull back and rejoin the main battle. When they emerged from the asteroid field, they found the Allied fleet in control of the field. The Dominion's central force was in disarray, retreating toward their staging grounds. The victory was not without cost. Several Allied ships had been lost and many more were damaged. But for the first time since the war began, the Kalar saw the Dominion forced into retreat in open battle. On Station Armath, Selar addressed both fleets. Today we have shown the Dominion that numbers alone will not break us. We stand together, now, Kalar and human, and we will not yield. The message was broadcast across both civilizations. On human worlds, people cheered at the news. In Kalar cities, the image of human ships fighting at their side became a symbol of hope. In the quiet after the battle, Captain Laren stood at the observation deck of the Resolute. The stars stretched endlessly before him, but he knew the war was far from over. The Dominion would return with even greater force. Still, this day had proven something important. Humans were not here for glory or territory. They were here because a promise made centuries ago still mattered. And that, Lauren believed, was something the Dominion could never understand. The victory at the Alaris line had slowed the Dominion's advance, but the Allied commanders knew it was only a pause. The enemy was regrouping, gathering a larger fleet for the next strike. Scouts reported that the Dominion was building a massive command force at the edge of Kalar space. In the War Council aboard the Resolute, human and Kalar leaders studied the reports. Fleetmaster Salar spoke first. If they launch this force, we will face double the numbers we fought before. Even with our best tactics, we may not hold. Captain Laren remained calm. Then we will have to do something they do not expect. A human engineer named Riva, who had been working quietly at the edge of the table, stepped forward. We have something they will not be ready for. The Terran Research Division has been developing a device called the Gravity Fold Projector. It can distort space around a target, pulling or pushing it with extreme force. Until now, it has only been tested on asteroids and derelict ships. Seller frowned. You want to use it in battle? Riva nodded. If we can pull a Dominion command ship into the path of a collapsing star or a massive asteroid, we can disrupt their entire formation. Without their command, their fleet will be in chaos. The idea was risky. The projector was large, required enormous power, and had never been used in combat. If it failed, the Allied fleet would be exposed. Still, the commanders agreed it was worth the attempt. Over the next several days, the humans worked around the clock to mount the gravity fold. Projector on the Resolute, Kalar technicians assisted, adapting the ship's systems to handle the extra energy load. The projector's focusing array extended from the ship's ventral hull like a long silver spine, its surface lined with glowing panels. The target was chosen. The Dominion flagship, Vorath's Will, a massive vessel that served as the warlord's mobile command center. Intelligence placed it near a volatile star in the Relath system. The star was nearing the end of its life, unstable and prone to violent eruptions. The plan was simple in outline but dangerous in execution. The Resolute would approach under heavy escort, activate the gravity fold projector at close range, and drag the flagship toward the star's unstable region. The rest of the fleet would hold off enemy reinforcements until the task was complete. The day of the mission arrived. The Allied fleet emerged from hyperspace on the edge of the Relath system. The unstable star burned bright and angry at the center, sending waves of energy across space. Dominion ships moved in tight formation around, their flagship ready for battle. The first exchange of fire lit up the void. Kalar cruisers fired precise energy beams, cutting through enemy escort lines. Human destroyers weaved between larger ships, launching torpedoes at key targets. The Resolute pressed forward, shields glowing under the impact of enemy weapons. On the bridge, Riva stood at the projector's controls. Charging array. Gravity fold sequence at 30%, she reported. Lauren kept his eyes on the main display. Steady. We need to be within optimal range before you fire. The Resolute closed in, every meter feeling like a battle of its own. Finally, the Dominion flagship loomed on the screen, its dark hull marked with crimson lines that glowed like molten veins. Now, Lauren ordered. Riva's hands flew across the controls. The projector's spine glowed brighter, and a shimmering distortion spread out from the Resolute toward the flagship. Space itself seemed to bend and twist. The Vorath's will shuddered as the pull took hold, its engines straining against the unseen force. "Gravity fold at full power," Riva called out. The star's unstable region flared as the massive ship was dragged closer. The Dominion flagship fired all weapons at the Resolute, but Allied escorts moved in to block the shots, their shields taking the damage. Suddenly, the star erupted in a massive burst of energy. The wave struck the flagship, overloading its shields. The ship's structure groaned under the strain. Alarms blared across the Dominion fleet as their command vessel drifted toward the star's burning surface. A final surge from the projector sealed its fate. The Vorath's will was swallowed by the star's violent flare, disappearing in a burst of light that lit the battlefield. For a moment, both fleets paused in shock. Then the Allied ships pressed the attack. Without their flagship, the Dominion, formation crumbled. Some ships fled, others fought on briefly before being disabled or destroyed. When the battle ended, the Allied fleet stood victorious. Cheers erupted across the comm channels. The destruction of the Dominion flagship was more than a tactical win. It was a symbolic blow. It showed that the enemy could be beaten even in the heart of their strength. On the Resolute's bridge, Riva leaned back from the controls, her face pale but proud. Projector is offline. Coil damage is heavy, but it worked. Lauren smiled. It worked better than I hoped. You may have just changed the course of this war. In the days that followed, the news spread across both human and Kalar worlds. People spoke of the battle at Relath with awe. The image of the Dominion flagship being dragged into the star became a rallying symbol for the Alliance. But in the dark halls of the Dominion's War Council, the warlord's rage burned hotter than the star that had claimed his ship. He swore that the humans would pay for this insult and began planning a counterstrike unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The destruction of the Dominion flagship at Relath had been a blow to the enemy, but it only fueled their anger. The warlord gathered the remnants of his fleets and combined them with new forces from the outer sectors. Every world under his control contributed ships, soldiers, and weapons. Intelligence reports warned that the Dominion planned a final assault at Ilrath Gate, a critical passage that controlled access to the inner Keelar systems. Captain Laren and Fleet Master Seller studied the maps aboard the Resolute. "If Ilrath Gate falls," Seller said, his voice grim, "the Dominion will have an open path to every colony. We cannot let that happen." Lauren nodded. "Then we make our stand here. Humans and Kalar together. We will fight like our lives depend on it. Because they do." The Allied forces prepared quickly. Civilian transport ships were moved out of the danger zone, while warships formed layers of defense. Humans contributed their advanced energy shields and rapid-fire destroyers, while Kalar brought heavy cruisers and defensive stations. Every ship, every soldier, was ready to defend the gate. When the Dominion fleet arrived, it was massive. Thousands of ships filled the void, their dark hulls lined with glowing crimson lights. The enemy's warlord himself led the advance aboard, a new flagship, larger and more heavily armed than the last. The battle began with a roar of energy beams and missiles. Allied ships fired in unison, striking the front lines of the Dominion fleet. The first wave was relentless. Human destroyers, weaved between enemy cruisers, hitting weak points with precision. Kalar heavy ships unleashed volleys of energy that tore through enemy shields. On the Resolute, Captain Laren watched the battle unfold. "Maintain formation. Focus on the enemy capital ships. Let the smaller craft handle the escorts." Riva worked the gravity fold projector, modified for battlefield use. "Ready to deploy," she said. "We can create localized folds to trap clusters of enemy ships, but we must be precise. One mistake, and we risk hitting our own forces." Lauren considered the risks. "Do it. Target the center of their formation. Break their command lines." The projector activated. Space around the Dominion center warped and twisted. Several enemy cruisers drifted out of formation, unable to control their movement. Allied ships took advantage, striking the disoriented vessels. Explosions spread across the battlefield as hulls ruptured and weapon systems failed. The Dominion, Warlord's new flagship, advanced, firing massive energy beams that could destroy entire fleets. Kalar cruisers moved to intercept, taking the brunt of the attack. Several human destroyers launched high-speed maneuvers, hitting the flagship's weak points and avoiding its fire. Amid the chaos, a human pilot named Nira spotted an opportunity. She signaled Lauren, who gave the order. A small squadron of destroyers, including Nira's ship, raced toward the enemy flagship, weaving through fire and debris. Their goal was to deliver an energy charge to the ship's core, enough to disrupt its power and shields. The squadron dodged missiles and beams, pushing through the Dominion defenses. Nira's hands moved quickly, guiding the ship through a narrow opening near the flagship's engine array. With a precise strike, she deployed the energy charge. The ship trembled as the core overloaded, and a massive explosion rocked the enemy flagship. The Dominion formation faltered. Without their command ship, communication broke down, and confusion spread through their forces. Allied ships pressed the advantage, attacking in coordinated waves. The Dominion fleet tried to regroup, but every maneuver was met with resistance and counterattacks. On the ground, Kalar planetary defenses along Ilrath Gate fired massive energy beams into space, targeting the remaining enemy ships. The human fleet used the terrain of nearby asteroid belts to ambush and trap stragglers. The combination of technology, strategy, and courage overwhelmed the Dominion. Hours passed, and by the end of the day, the battlefield was littered with debris. The Dominion had lost the majority of its fleet, and the survivors retreated into deep space. The Allied forces had held Ilrath Gate, exhausted but victorious. Captain Laren and Fleetmaster Seller addressed the crews. "Today we have defended not just a gate, but the hope of every world under our protection," Sellar said. "Humans and Kalar fought as one, and together we have shown that courage, strategy, and unity can overcome even the largest force." Crew members cheered, some wiping away tears of relief. The humans had proven themselves not only as allies, but as heroes in the eyes of the Kalar. Later, Lauren stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, looking at the stars beyond Ilrath Gate. The war was not yet over. The Dominion would return someday, but the events at Ilrath had changed the balance of power. Humans and Kalar had shown that when they stood together, they could face the impossible. Riva joined him, her face weary but satisfied. The projector held. "I never imagined we would see it used on this scale in our lifetime." Lauren smiled. "Neither did I. But sometimes what seems impossible is only waiting for someone brave enough to try." In the colonies across the Kalar, systems celebrations erupted. Stories of human bravery and Kalar resilience spread quickly. Monuments were planned, songs were written, and a sense of unity that had never existed before settled among the peoples. Even as the Allies celebrated, messages came from scouting ships. They reported the Dominion regrouping at distant sectors, but the fear of facing humans and Kalar together made them cautious. It would take time for them to recover and strike again. For now, the galaxy held its breath in relief. The humans had fulfilled a promise, fighting alongside the Kalar when they were needed most. The legend of their courage and strategy would be remembered across worlds for generations. Captain Laren knew that true peace was still far away, but the Battle of Ilrath Gate had proven one truth. When humans repay a debt, the impact can change the fate of entire worlds. Months had passed since the Battle of Ilrath Gate. The Allied forces had repaired their fleets, rebuilt colonies, and strengthened defenses across the Kalar systems. Humans and Kalar worked side by side, sharing knowledge, technology, and strategies. The unity formed in battle had grown into a bond that neither time nor distance could break. Captain Laren stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the star fields drift past. Messages of gratitude and respect came from distant worlds, acknowledging the humans' courage. Fleetmaster Seller joined him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have done more than defend a gate, Lauren," Seller said. "You have changed the course of history. Every world that survived because of your efforts will remember it." Lauren nodded. "We did what needed to be done. Not for glory, but because it was right. Humans always keep their promises. Even as the Allies celebrated, intelligence reports warned that the Dominion warlord had not been defeated, only delayed. He gathered forces in the far reaches of the galaxy, planning one final attempt to strike fear and take control. But the human and Kalar fleets were ready. They had learned, adapted, and grown stronger from every battle. The final confrontation began near the outer edge of the Dominion sector. Scouts reported the enemy fleet advancing in tight formation, their numbers intimidating. But Lauren and Seller remained calm. They had a plan. "We will draw them into the Maelstrom Belt," Lauren explained to the fleet commanders. "The gravitational forces there will work with our strategy. We can split their fleet, isolate their command ship, and end this once and for all. The Allied fleet moved swiftly. Smaller squadrons acted as decoys, luring sections of the Dominion fleet into traps. Human destroyers used their agility to harass the enemy, while Kalar cruisers delivered heavy strikes. The Dominion fell into the maelstrom, where massive asteroids and energy storms made navigation difficult. Many ships collided with debris, while others were caught in gravitational distortions created by Riva and the human engineers using the modified gravity fold projectors. Amid the chaos, Lauren's squadron focused on the warlord's flagship. It was larger than anything they had faced, bristling with weapons and shields. Nira led the strike team, flying with precision and courage. The human ships weaved through fire and debris, each maneuver a test of skill and nerves. Riva's voice came through the comms. "Projector is ready for the final sequence. We can trap the flagship in a gravity loop long enough for your squadron to deliver a decisive strike." "Do it," Lauren commanded. The projector's energy flowed, bending space around the enemy. Flagship. It trembled, engines struggling to compensate. Nira's squadron moved in, guided by the human pilot's quick thinking and fearless maneuvers. They delivered energy charges to the ship's core, each hit weakening the warlord's defenses. The flagship exploded in a massive burst of light, breaking apart under the force of the attack. The Dominion fleet, leaderless and demoralized, scattered in retreat. Many ships surrendered, realizing that their warlord could no longer control them. The battle was over. The Allied fleet had won a decisive victory. Humans and Kalar had proved not only their strength, but their unity. The galaxy would remember this day for generations. Back on the Resolute, Lauren looked at the stars, feeling a mix of relief and pride. "It is finally over," he said quietly. Seller placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not just over, Lauren. This is the beginning of a new era. Humans have earned the respect of every world that stands here today. Your people have shown what courage, determination, and honor can achieve." Across the Kalar systems, celebrations erupted. Monuments were raised to honor the heroes of the conflict. Schools taught the stories of human bravery and strategy. Songs and tales spread across planets, reminding everyone that when humans keep their promises, the consequences can change the fate of entire worlds. Riva, Nira, and the other human engineers and pilots were honored in ceremonies that lasted for days. Each of them received recognition not only for their skill, but for their willingness to face danger and uncertainty for the greater good. Captain Laren addressed a crowd on Kalar Prime, speaking to both humans and Kalar. "We fought together, and together we have secured a future where freedom and peace can grow. This was not the work of one person or one fleet. It was the work of all of us, united. Remember this: courage, honor, and unity can overcome even the greatest threat." The crowd erupted in applause. People from every corner of the galaxy cheered for humans and Kalar alike. The bond formed in battle had become a symbol of hope. As the years passed, humans continued to work with the Kalar, exploring new systems, building new colonies, and defending the galaxy from smaller threats. Their reputation spread, and tales of their courage reached even the most distant worlds. They were remembered as a people who repaid a debt, who fought with honor, and who changed the course of history. Captain Laren often stood on the Resolute's observation deck, looking at the stars. He knew the galaxy would never be completely free of danger, but he also knew that humans and their allies were ready for whatever came next. The legacy of their courage and determination would guide future generations. And in the quiet moments, when the stars shone brightly and the galaxy seemed peaceful, Lawrence smiled. Humans had repaid their debt, and in doing so, had earned a place in the history of all worlds. They had proven that even in the darkest times, courage, honor, and unity could shine brighter than any star. The galaxy would never forget the humans who stood with their allies, faced impossible odds, and changed the fate of worlds. Their story would be told for centuries, a reminder that when humans repay a debt, all worlds will remember.